Well, welcome everyone to today's information session for the 2024 Community Grants Opportunities at HumanitiesDC. This presentation will tell you about all 6 opportunities that will be available in 2024. This session will be recorded. There is ASL interpretation as well, and if you would like captions, if you go to the bottom of your screen and click on the 3 dots that say more, there should be a way for you to see captions as well. Throughout this presentation, we welcome input from you all. There will be a Q&A opportunity at the end, but you are welcome throughout the presentation to type any questions or comments into the chat as well. And so to start us off, just introducing who we are at HumanitiesDC. We got a lot of new people on the call, so just wanted to say hello. My name is Hillary Steen, and I'm one of the community grants managers. And I'll let Leah introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Leah Gage, and I am the other community grants manager here at HumanitiesDC.
Great. And not on the call today, but still an important member of the team is Loy Namard, and she's the Director of Grant Making and Programs. So as you continue in the grant process, Leah and I are your main points of contact, although you might hear from Loy, you might see her name around as well. Next slide, please. And now we want to know who you are, everyone who's in the room, and tell us what brought you here today. So if you can briefly say your name, any organizational affiliation if you have, and a brief mention of your interest for your project, interest in our grant making, etc. You are welcome to just start talking, or you can type in the chat. And we'll just do popcorn style, so anyone can start if you are comfortable.
Good evening. I will start. My name is Devin Walker, Ward 4 resident with the Uncle Devin Show, a children's music children's music programming that uses drums and percussion to cultivate their minds. And I've been looking at doing something with you all for years and just could never get around to it. So I said, this is going to be my year. And particularly, I do a lot of professional development training around racism in children's music. And I have a particular interest in looking at the impact that racism in children's music has had on DC schools. And so I don't know if this will be a good fit or not. I'm still getting a better understanding of it. So that's just one. I have a couple of ideas, but I think that's the one that I'm really focusing on.
Great. Thanks for coming, Devin. And I see in the chat, Vina is joining us as well. And they're interested in pursuing an oral history project around DC women who have survived breast cancer in their post-cancer experiences. So thank you, Vina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sahara Khan. I'm with Volunteer Fairfax. We are an organization in Fairfax, Virginia, although we serve residents in the DMV area. And our primary mission is to help individuals and organizations amplify their community impact through volunteerism and civic engagement. So that is my primary interest in just helping families and children, and especially underserved communities, get involved in volunteerism and make it more accessible to everyone.
Great. Thanks, Sahara. And Lee popped into the chat with Horton's Kids, and they serve kids and families in Ward 8 to learn about various opportunities we have specifically for a media lab. So welcome, Lee. And Noni from Bloom Bars, and that is an arts and community providing space to learn about all of the activities we have. So thank you, Noni. Welcome.
Hi, Bradley Jansen. I'm interested in the DC Oral History Project. I live on a 1-block long alley street on DC that was created in 91. And I've been here since in 1891. I've been here since 1997. And it's kind of a microcosm of what's been going on in DC, you know, racially and other things. We had a very high profile murder in the early 90s. And then lots of renovations and rehabs and things since then. So I want to kind of get a history of the street, but look at it in a broader context. And if I turn on the video, my internet will cut you out completely. So sorry.
No worries. And thank you, Bradley, and welcome. Anyone else for right now? All right. There will be more opportunity later.
Hello?
Oh, go ahead.
Hi, I'm apologize to be late. I was having some problems with my laptop, so I'm apologize. I'm not sure what to say, but my name is Jose Gutierrez, and I'm a historian, and I would like to see if I can apply for a grant to do oral histories with Latinx LGBTQ community.
Great. Thanks, Jose. And that was exactly what we asked people to talk about, so it's all good.
Thank you.
Perfect, yeah.
And so later on in this presentation, we'll have more time to learn about each other's projects. But it looks like already there's a great variety of different kinds of projects and different topic areas, which is very exciting. And so we can move on to the next slide.
Great. So we'll tell you a bit about what we do at Humanities DC. Our goal is to help Washingtonians connect to each other, deepen their relationships with the city, and do so through the humanities. We're hoping to build cross-cultural understanding, get a sense of the history of Washington, DC. And one of the ways that we do this is through community-informed grant making. Our goal is to invest in local scholars, grassroots experts, and organizations, as well as engaging all residents through partnership-based public programming. So last year, we gave about $1 million in grant funding, and this year we expect to do the same across 6 programs. Our first grant cycle is now open. That opened December 11th. And will close February 20th. So that's when those applications will be due. Our second cycle will open March 4th and be due May 1st. And we will go into what all of those grant programs are. But first, let's talk a bit about the humanities, because that can be an area that can bring about some confusion. So what are the humanities? To us, the humanities are really the study of human society and human culture. But when we say study, that can often seem really academic or scholarly. And our goal is to really bring the humanities to the community and to find the humanities that is happening, that kind of scholarly research, that kind of work that's being done in a community-based setting. So the humanities, also another great way to think about the humanities is all the different disciplines that make up the humanities. So thinking about the way we understand our past through history, anthropology, and archaeology, through our present expressions, through literature, linguistics, language, arts history, and criticism, and our stories' values through ethics, philosophy, comparative religion, and law. So our 2024 grant cycles, as we said, first one's now open. It will be due February 20th by 6 p.m., just at 5:59 p.m. So those 4 grant programs are Community, Culture, and Heritage, Visions, which is our projects and events grant, DC Oral History Collaborative and Extension, and our DC Oral History Collaborative Beyond the Archives grant. And cycle 2 will open March 4th, as we said, and that will be our capacity building and youth in the humanities grants. So the first grant opportunity we'll talk about is Community, Culture, and Heritage. This grant opportunity is open to DC-based individuals, community groups, or nonprofit organizations. The maximum award amount is $10,000. This project period will begin May 1st, 2024, and projects should be completed by April 30th, 2025. The goal of this program is really to preserve the culture, memories, and experiences of the Washington grassroots, to capture the narrative of longtime residents and unfolding stories of newer residents for future generations. This might look like some panel discussion events, videos or podcasts, multimedia projects, educational materials, lesson plans, poster series, exhibits, tours. There's lots of options for this grant. But the key is that it's a smaller grant, it's a $10,000 grant, it's open to individuals. It's not necessarily for established organizations who have a lot of capacity. Our goal is really to reach the grassroots with this grant. We require that you work with a community expert or a scholar, and we can talk a little bit more about what that means. And grantees in this program take part in a public showcase that HumanitiesDC puts on each spring. This spring, it will happen in February at the Anacostia Arts Center. Next spring, it will be obviously in 2025, and that will take place then and will feature all of the work of our community culture and heritage grantees. As we said, applications are due February 20th. And this presentation will be up on the website, and there's a link to the RFP, but that's also on our website. And just a couple of examples of our grantees in this area this year: Washington Women in Jazz Archives. They put together archival material of ephemera, of oral history recordings, and a podcast that they put together that covers kind of the gamut of the Washington Women in Jazz organization, as well as just Washington Women in Jazz. And then Artistas in the Capital, that's from Hola Cultura. That's a podcast that interviews Latina and Latinx DC artists and residents. And that's a podcast that's out now. So those are two examples.
And the next available opportunity is called the DC Oral History Collaborative, or DCOHC. This project period is from May 1st of 2024 through December 31st of 2024. So this opportunity has a shorter project period than CCH and the other grant opportunities that we'll discuss later in this presentation. These are projects that explore DC life, history, and culture through interviews with the people who have lived it. The maximum award is $8,000, although you can also request an additional $5,000 for a translation of your oral interviews into another language as well. This is open to DC-based individuals, community groups, and nonprofits. DC Oral History Collaborative grantees are considered members of the DC Oral History Collaborative. All grantees will be required to attend a 3-session oral history training workshop in mid-April. For oral history projects, they're a little different from our other programs because oral history interviews are pretty unique. These are not interviews like you would see in journalism or in sociology, but these are really asking people about their life stories and how they might have been affected by major historical events, or perhaps how historical events have been impacted by individuals. So there's a lot that goes into oral history projects, but we don't want that to scare you. You can see the final deliverables. This project does have final deliverables that are required, and that would include media files, transcripts, indexes, and metadata for each and every interview you do. Again, don't be alarmed by all of these additional requirements, because this 3-day oral history training will walk you through everything you have to do for this kind of project. You would work very closely with us at HumanitiesDC and consultants throughout the course of your project to make sure that everything is going well. But before you apply, just be aware that there are additional elements for DC Oral History Collaborative that other grant programs don't have. There's also the opportunity within this opportunity, I guess, for the DC Oral History Collaborative Extension. And the extension applicants must have completed a previous DCOHC project that has already been funded by HumanitiesDC. And so the extension projects extend the project that you already did with us, whereas the quote-unquote regular DC Oral History Collaborative grant is for people to get brand new oral histories. The application for this opportunity is due on February 20th, 2024. Next slide, please. So here are some two great examples of current grantees. One grantee is Vision House, and their project is called How the Equal Rights Center Became a Powerful Force for Civil Rights. And so the organization interviewed members from the Equal Rights Center, Washington Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, to learn about how they both work together to advance the cause of civil rights in DC. And one of our extension grantees is Vikram Surya Chervolu, and his project is called The Legacy of Anti-Racist Neighborhood Housing Organizing in Adams Morgan. And Vikram interviewed members of the Latino community and on creators' residents, focusing on low-income affordable housing in the Adams Morgan neighborhood of DC. An additional opportunity we have is called DCOHC Beyond the Archives. So for this project, or for this grant opportunity, excuse me, grantees would use archived oral histories to produce DC-focused public humanities projects. So unlike the previous grant opportunity, you would not be collecting new oral histories, but rather going into an archive to see to see what you could find out, basically, and get these oral histories out into the public to bring the oral histories beyond the archives. So projects might include exhibitions, written research, course curricula, films and videos, etc. So you can do a lot of things with archives. And so the project period for this opportunity is from May 1st, 2024 through April 30th of 2025. So this matches closer to CCH rather than the DCOHC one that I just said. The maximum award for this opportunity is $12,000, and it is open to DC-based individuals, community groups, and nonprofit organizations. Just like with CCH, Beyond the Archives applicants must include a community expert or scholar. And again, we look at scholar very broadly. You do not have to have a scholar who is a formal scholar in academia, but rather someone who perhaps has lived experience or has done more informal research. They could be considered your community expert or scholar. The application for this opportunity is due February 20th, 2024. And an example of a current grantee within the Beyond the Archives opportunity is Sammy Miranda, and he did a project called It's Your Mug, which used archived oral histories to talk about the legendary poetry open mic nights that were founded in the 90s in a Georgetown coffee shop. And very quickly, I see in the chat that Devin had a question. Can you use any of this money to pay interviewees for their time and knowledge? Great question, and the answer is yes. If any of you are interested in oral history, which I know at the beginning a few of you said you were, yes, we highly encourage you to pay your interviewees because they're spending a lot of time telling their stories. So stipends are definitely highly encouraged. Another grant opportunity we have is called Visions, Projects and Events. And this is to create or continue innovative interpretation of humanities scholarship for wide public audiences. So this opportunity is very similar to CCH, but this is more broad. So whereas CCH is focused more on grassroots, Visions is for documentary films, they're for festivals and conferences, etc. So wider scale projects. And that's reflected in the dollar amount that you can request for this opportunity, which is $25,000. So Visions is definitely one of our larger grant opportunities. The project period is from May 1st, 2024 through April 30th of 2025. And this opportunity is only for DC-based nonprofit organizations. So if you're an individual or an informal group that does not have 501c3 status, then you would have to apply through a fiscal sponsor. And we'll talk more about fiscal sponsors later in this presentation. And similar to Beyond the Archives and CCH, all Visions applications must also include a community expert or scholar. And the application for Visions is due February 20th, 2024. And two fabulous examples of current Visions grantees are Cultural DC and the Capital Jewish Museum. So Cultural DC did an event called Torrents, New Links to Black Futures, and it was a multi-day festival. And so they gathered together professional scholars, collectors around Black cross-diasporic futures through visual arts, film, performance. It was very extensive, and it was, I hear, a wonderful experience. And then the Capital Jewish Museum did 3 events around an exhibit that they had called Notorious RBG, The Life and Times of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And they were able to have community days based around this exhibit for families, diving into the exhibition's themes and making an art activity to inspire action based off of that exhibit.
Okay, so that's cycle 1. Those are the 4 grant opportunities that are currently open. And as we said, cycle 2 will open March 4th. So these 2 opportunities are strictly for nonprofit organizations. So just keep that in mind as we go through these. Capacity building is the first opportunity we'll talk about. This is eligible for DC-based, humanities-focused nonprofit organizations. So you have to be DC-based, you have to be a nonprofit organization, and your work or your mission really needs to be rooted in the humanities and the mission of the work that you're doing. Again, this award amount is $25,000, so one of our larger grants. For this project period, because grants or applications are due May 1st, the grant period will start July 1st and be finished by April 30th, 2025. So these grants are really to strengthen the capacity of organizations and help you continue your mission work. So some past examples have been communication strategies, organizations applying to do volunteer recruitment, update your technology, things that support the capacity of the organization. So these applications will open up March 4th. The RFPs will also become available in March, and the applications will be due May 1st. And 2 examples, Corazon Folklorico, they received a grant from us to implement some software that they are using to make them stronger. Their infrastructure as an organization is stronger. And DC Arts and Education Collaborative received funds to upgrade their website and their CRM system. The other grant opportunity that will open in cycle 2 is the Youth and the Humanities opportunity. So this grant is eligible for DC-based, humanities-focused youth-serving organizations that are nonprofits. So these are really for organizations who have a mission of reaching youth, particularly older youth. We say ages 11 to 19 primarily. And that do so using the humanities, do so through creative writing or arts education or things that are really rooted in the humanities. This award amount is $25,000, and this is really a general operating support grant. So while we say the project period is July 1st, 2024 through April 30th, 2025, that means that the funds should be spent during that time. But there is no project related or project necessary to articulate for this program. This is general operating support. But as we said, the organizations really need to be focused on using humanities as a tool to help young people explore issues that they identify as important to themselves and their communities. Applications will open March 4th and be due May 1st. And 2 examples of organizations who received Youth in the Humanities grants this year are, Mikvah Challenge. That's an organization that engages with youth to help them explore civic engagement and democracy, and the Latin American Youth Center. They used the grant for their general operating, and they've been around for a very long time here in DC. Mikvah Challenge is a little bit of a newer organization. So we're really aiming to to serve different types of organizations here. I saw a couple of things come through the chat, and just making sure if there are any questions.
You know, I had one question. I put it in chat. If I know that there's an organization that's currently it's already a nonprofit, but they also are getting a DC address as we speak. If they get it now, sometime this month, would they be eligible to apply, or do you have to have a residency in DC for a while before you do?
I suppose. Yeah, go ahead, Hillary.
So typically, yes, they would be eligible. If they have a brand new address, you don't have to be in DC for a period of time before becoming eligible. But it also kind of depends on their registration. We might come back to ask for additional documentation. But they would still be eligible with that address, yes.
Thank you so much.
So I'll move on, but we'll have more opportunity for questions. So I saw some questions around fiscal sponsorship. So we mentioned this briefly. Fiscal sponsorship is something that is open to individuals or community organizations that don't have a formal 501c3 status. They may apply for a grant through a nonprofit that serves as their fiscal sponsor to receive the grant on their behalf. And some of our opportunities allow this, some don't. So our capacity building and youth in the humanities grants, those are for nonprofit organizations that are established. So those would not be eligible to have individuals apply through a fiscal sponsor. Our community culture and heritage, the DCOHC grants and the Beyond the Archives grants, individuals may apply through a fiscal sponsor if you wish, but it's not required. We will make grants to individuals through these 3 programs, and fiscal sponsor doesn't need to be a part of that process. However, you may wish to work with a fiscal sponsor anyway if you're applying as an individual, and that's fine. For the Visions grant, which is, again, that $25,000 grant to do larger events, documentary films, larger public programs, individuals who wish to apply must do so through a fiscal sponsor. So again, they would be identifying and working with a 501c3 that has a DC address, and they would serve as the grantee, as the sponsor for the individual who's seeking the grant.
And another thing with fiscal sponsorship, it can be a little complicated. We realize that. So if you take a look at the RFPs that are on our website, I provided a link in the chat to like that part of the website. And also there's more information in the actual application. If any of you have already gone into Found it, to take a look at everything. But fiscal sponsors at a very basic extent, the sponsee, they're the ones who would submit the application. They're also the ones who would be submitting the required final and interim reports. So we would be communicating a lot with the fiscal sponsor, even if they would not be the ones to actually do the project.
So yeah, we offer office hours. We offer a lot of information on the website about fiscal sponsorship if you have additional questions about this. The other thing I just want to go over is the RFP. We've mentioned this. This is the request for proposal. For each grant opportunity, there is an RFP on our website. This is a document that goes in much greater detail about the program itself, about the eligibility requirements. And I really strongly encourage everybody who's considering applying for a grant to read through the RFP. So the RFP, the main things you want to look for is the eligibility requirements. You know, that will give you more info about fiscal sponsorship as well. The funding scope, the guidance and requirements for the elements of what will make a successful project that's eligible for funding. We include all of the weighted review criteria that our reviewers will be looking at as they're reviewing your application. It includes allowable and unallowable costs. So all of the things that a grant can pay for and those things that it cannot. Information about ADA compliance, making sure that if you're an organization of a certain size, or if you're hosting a public event, that your project is accessible. And then the whole process for applying and grant review and what that looks like over the next weeks. Speaking of which.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of all the reviews, so all applicants are reviewed by staff for eligibility. And so this stage allows us to see if you are could theoretically receive funding at all. So this is where we would check, for example, going back to Devin's question about the registration for an organization, for example. And all eligible applications are then reviewed by external community members. And so these reviewers are people who have strong ties to the humanities in DC. It's a fabulous group of people. They read through every single eligible application in detail, combing through and providing feedback, both quantitative and qualitative, for all eligible applications. And if you are interested in learning more about the review process, let us know. You are allowed to be a grant reviewer and a grant applicant if you so choose. You just would not be able to review applications in the same grant program that you apply to. And so with the review criteria that Leah just mentioned, that's listed clearly on the RFP and criteria. Then after the review period ends, the HumanitiesDC board makes sure that we on staff followed the correct review process. Crossed our I's, dotted our T's, make sure that everything looks good. Then after that, all eligible applications, so people who perhaps were chosen for funding, people who were not chosen for funding, all eligible applicants are notified about 8 weeks after the application deadline about their funding status. So it's a very quick turnaround between the application deadline and knowing if you have actually received the funding or not. If everything looks good with their acceptance form, they could receive their funding about 2 weeks after being notified. So the fact that you might apply for a grant and then 10 weeks later actually get the funds into your bank account is really fast in grant making, and it's a really exciting process. But we really try to move through this quickly, just because we know that you are all eager to get started on your projects right away. And so here are some additional resources for all of you. We have, I guess, 2 more information sessions. These will both be in person. One will be at the Benning Dorothy Heights Library and one at the MLK Library. So if you have any colleagues or friends or family members who might be interested in learning more about our grants, you're more than welcome to invite them to come to either of those in-person information sessions. What we go over during those sessions will be the same as what we're talking about in this session. We'll also be starting next week, we'll be doing grant-specific workshops that will go into detail about all 4 of the Cycle 1 grant programs. So we'll go into more detail about eligibility, about what kinds of projects we're looking for, and then doing a deep dive in the application itself. So going through section by section of the application, making sure you're all aware of what we're looking for and what reviewers will look for in your application. So there are 4 workshops coming up for all 4 of the Cycle 1 opportunities next week. Additionally, we have virtual office hours. So this will allow you to meet one-on-one with me or Leah to go over more individualized questions. So we provide a lot of information in these sessions, in these workshops, on the website. But if you have particular questions about your particular application, or you're trying to decide where you want to apply, then the office hours is a great way for you to connect with us one-on-one to talk with us about all of your fabulous ideas. And that's it for the presentation. So now we can open up the floor to any Q&A. If anyone wants to speak or if you want to type in that, we are open.
I feel like I'm talking too much, but if I'll will lead. I know that you mentioned that the DC Collaborative had received $25,000 to upgrade their website information. Was it something specifically that they had to do to meet the criteria of humanities, or is that just part of it because of the work that they do in the city and working with different arts organizations? I was trying to figure out how I'm still trying to understand really like the definition of humanities versus art and how that might fall in with that within that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, you know, the definition the way that I would think about it is how you are trying to do storytelling. I think that's often a really helpful way to think about it. If you are working on storytelling, if you're working on ways to elicit people's stories, to allow people to share their narratives, that's typically going to connect you to the humanities. That's basically a way to think about the humanities. So organizations that have that as a key part of their mission would be eligible for capacity building grants, and those who then also additionally have that youth focus would be eligible for youth in the humanities grants. Something I can't recall if we mentioned this, but Cycle 1 grants or individuals and organizations who wish to apply for grants may apply to one Cycle 1 grant and one Cycle 2 grant. So if you wish to apply to multiple grants, that's fine, but only one per cycle. And if you've been a grantee before, you're still eligible to apply. If you've applied and been denied in the past, you're strongly encouraged to reapply. Yeah.
I have a question about that. Hello.
Hi.
For what if you want to apply for a humanities grant as an individual and do an individual project, but then also want to apply for the same grant working with a group of people doing a separate project that has nothing to do with the individual application? Can you still apply twice in one cycle?
Would you be the director for the organizational application?
I would not. I would be working with someone, but I would not be the director.
Got it. That's a good question. To my knowledge, Leah, you might jump in as well. We encourage people to really have separate projects. So if you apply as an individual and you also want to be a part of an organizational application, we won't prevent you from doing that, but we do encourage to choose one or the other, ideally.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And if you do use a fiscal sponsor, do you all have any, I guess, rules about, many times the fiscal sponsors may want a percentage for their overhead and all of that. Do you all have any parameters for how much that can be or anything to that extent?
I believe it's 10%, Leah, is that right?
Yep. Yep.
Yes, so 10% of a grant would go to the fiscal sponsor for all the work that they're doing for the grant.
Thank you.
Hi there. I have a quick question. I'm a former journalist who just recently started working as a consultant with a literacy organization, Reach Incorporated. And I think what I'm most curious about is I'm just trying to figure out if we would be eligible. We do work with youth. What we do is whoops, Tootsie. I'm going to go upstairs. We hire basically CPS teenagers in wards 4 through 8 to tutor elementary students. And basically what it does is create, better literacy outcomes for both groups of kids. And besides that, we do this big summer leadership program. But I think my biggest question is just, would we be eligible, or is that a conversation that's better had if I set up office hours with you guys? What do you prefer, Hillary and Leah?
Well, so the way it's described, the way that I just heard what you described, I'm not certain that that's necessarily the humanities.
I
However,
wondered about that. Yeah.
However, I think it really depends on how you go about building literacy. So if it's just tutoring, then I don't know that it would necessarily qualify. But if it's done through creative writing, perhaps, or interactive.
Yeah, our teens publish books. I mean, we just had a big feature done in the Washington Post about our teens and the fact that high school students publish books that are then used in the DC curriculum. And we also do a lot of stuff in the summer with them as well. But does it, I mean, I don't want to hog all of the time that we have here. So it seems like it might be best for me to set up some kind of, just do office hours just to follow up about it.
Definitely set up office hours, but as you continued, I think it very well could be. I think it definitely could fit. So yes, please do sign up for office hours.
Okay.
Want to hear more? We.
Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Like I said, I'm a total newbie at this whole grant thing. So thank you for your patience and everybody else as well.
For sure. One of our goals, with these sessions, with office hours, is to really demystify the grant process. Humanities DC really does want to be rooted in DC and allow DC residents, people in the grassroots community to access this funding. So however we can do that.
Sounds great. And my dog also agrees that you rock. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Jose. Did you have? Oh, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So the next is going to be February 1st at the Martin Luther King Library, the next meeting.
Do you mean the next info session?
Yes. Or not? I believe it's in.
I think the next one we're doing is actually January 16th at Benning Library.
Okay.
And
Okay. Thank you.
And then we do have one, as you said, February 1st at MLK. And I think we're even going to be adding one in our office.
Thank you.
So yeah, we'll that information will all be on our website. If you go to the grant opportunities page, it's linked there at the top. All of the new info sessions and workshops we'll have.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just put the Eventbrite in the chat so you can see all of the options that we have over the next 2 months.
Great.
So as we've continued moving through the presentation, has anyone felt inspired? Like, are there any grant programs that you're especially excited about, or ways you're thinking about your project now that we've gone through it a little bit more?
I wrote a song and I always wanted to get the history of it, but I did a song. It was called it was about Easter Monday in DC, and many people are not familiar with that history, but that in 1898, the White House started the Easter egg roll. It's an annual event that celebrates the holiday, but blacks weren't allowed to go. So for instead of getting mad, they all got together and went to the National Zoo. For over 100 years, blacks were going to the National Zoo to be able to celebrate. And it stopped in like 2016, 2017, after someone was shot. I don't know if they were killed, I can't remember, but that legacy, I always wanted to just go and do an oral history of interviewing people who were there, because I certainly wasn't there. And but I think that that would fit within the DC oral history project. So I was kind of inspired as you were mentioning that. Something that just came to my mind about that.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, thank you, Terrence, for providing more context. Terrence said that their classmate was actually the one who was shot in what you just said, Devin. But he's alive. He survived that. So
Oh, and just to interview that person would be great. Terrence, I'm a private message you my contact information. I would love to speak with you about that.
all right. So any final questions before we wrap up tonight's session?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my question is, I live right outside DC in Prince George's County. I mean, like literally over the line. But my project is DC based. Just when I had my medical treatment, it was in DC. I work in DC. My whole life is in DC. The people that I want to interview are in DC. So basically, I would just need a fiscal sponsor in order to do the project, since I haven't I need to get my toe over the line in an apartment in DC, I guess. I can't speak to anybody else's experience. I mean, I know there are medical facilities in Prince George's County and Maryland, but it was always closer for me to see doctors in DC. So my whole experience, my whole breast cancer experience, the experience of other people I know, that is all DC based. Do you guys provide assistance in finding a fiscal sponsor?
We don't, I mean, we have some fiscal sponsors that we've worked with, and Vina, I would encourage you to reach out to us. There's one in particular I'm thinking, but I'm meeting with an organization next week to kind of talk about what that would look like. And every fiscal sponsor relationship is different, and it's really something that we don't have a hand in. We have worked with fiscal sponsors, and if we can refer you to some organizations that we think might fit for your project or might be willing to take you on as a fiscal sponsee, we're happy to do that. But we can talk about that maybe offline. Who might best fit for you. Because it does sound like your project is a DC project. Because of our funding guidelines, we need to fund all grantees who have an address in DC. But if we can make that happen through a fiscal sponsor, then great.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Anything else further? Well, we encourage you to look, oh, go ahead, Nina.
Just one more quick question. In the budget, can you include the cost of paying for transcriptions for oral histories?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, with oral histories, there are so many, wouldn't say so many, but there are additional costs. So transcription, recording equipment, things like that. And yes, we would help you pay for those items.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Charles, yes, I see you're waving here.
I would like to speak with Leah, please.
Sure, go ahead.
And hold on, let me get my video. Okay. Okay.
I don't get help from people.
So I don't get
help from
I don't get
government.
help from the government or from
Just,
banks. I just
to,
have some
my
finances
now on Amazon
that are available. I sell books on Amazon. Here is one of them.
Took 35 years.
So it took 35 years to finish these two books, and from 1984 to 1990. So they're very powerful and deep, and they have a theme of fate, and I think it has an impact on our lives. So I need support from you to make this happen.
Remember
DC and the federal government gave me a status.
So I need your support.
So I need your support.
Thanks, Charles. Yes, so as you present, what you presented, you have these books that you wrote. As such, we wouldn't be able to fund anything around these books at this time, simply because we have to fund projects that are new, that are taking place, during the project period. That said, if there is a way that you wish to share your story, and how that was impacted by DC, or how you have impacted DC, I think that finding a way to build a project around that could make you eligible for funding from HumanitiesDC.
So many people are very curious about buying my book.
58 people
7 to 8 people were interested in buying the book here in the DC area, in DC. So we're waiting for Amazon for feedback about how many books have been sold.
I'll buy for a print.
I buy for print and then I sell to the public.
Okay. Well, we wouldn't be able to support, like, if you're asking for support with paying for the book selling or things like that, I don't think that's something that we could support with a grant. But I'm interested to talk to you more about how we can support your work. And I know that I have your email, Charles, and so I'll follow up with you after this session to see if maybe we can talk, work through a way to make your project eligible, or to find an eligible project within all of the work that you've done. Thank you. I see one more raise. Oh, go ahead.
So I prefer using captions, not sign language interpreters, because it's easier for me.
Okay. Okay, I will email you and we'll try to set up a call and that will use captions and we'll figure that out.
Bradley, I saw your hand was raised.
The last word.
Earlier in the discussion, you
Sure,
were talking about how
hold
you
on,
can
Bradley.
pay participants for oral histories. Is there any guidance for those, including them in the budget, how much you usually pay, or is there a range, or is it by the time, or how does that work?
Here, Bradley, we'll answer your question really quick, and then I want to go back to Charles, who had a final word. So the answer to that is, I believe we offer, we encourage a $200 honorarium for narrators, but that's something that you could work out with your narrators and make sure that it fits within your project budget. Is that right?
Yeah, we encourage like a minimum of $200 for narrators. So like Leia said, as long as you get it to work within your budget, yeah, we can support those kinds of expenses.
Thanks.
Okay, Charles, if you'd like to add, you said you had one last word.
I have been in touch with Humanities DC since 2020.
Now,
3 to 4 years later, I still haven't received any support from you. It's really frustrating.
I understand. And I will do whatever I can to provide as much information as possible to make sure that you could be eligible for funding. I know Hillary and I both just came on this year, and so we can't speak to the last 4 years, but we'll be happy to work with you directly. Thank you. Liz, go ahead. I see you have your hand raised. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. This is kind of a follow-up to Charles' question, I think. So our project involves a documentary that has already been created. And so what I'm wondering, it sounds like, you know, funding around the documentary itself wouldn't be eligible, but public events that then have kind of additional community storytelling elements would be if the documentary is incorporated, but you wouldn't fund an existing piece's launch or community kind of reception.
Yeah, that's more or less correct.
Okay.
If you wanted to set up office hours to tell us a little bit more, you're more than welcome to. But yeah, typically we wouldn't host receptions or launch parties or anything like that. But if you had an event that you wanted to do describing your film, maybe like a panel discussion or workshops or something like that around the film, that would be more within our wheelhouse.
Okay. Thank you so much.
It's very, very hard. Very, very hard for deaf and blind people to write books. and self-publish. And it's very triggering that we can't get this to work. And we really need the support.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you've done an incredible job, Charles, with, you know, publishing the books and everything. And like Leia said, we'll be happy to work with you to try to figure out a way that you can be eligible to apply for funding again.
Yes, thank you. And I'm trying to get it on Amazon. And it's up for review at the moment. So I'm hoping that that will end up being a pathway.
Yeah, definitely. Good luck with all of that. The publishing industry is not easy.
Yeah, and we'll reach out to you with some other resources for the deaf and hard of hearing community. Hillary and I had a conversation with some folks recently, and perhaps there's other avenues of support in the community that we can make happen.
So I would like to get a transcript for 74 at home. I work in a federal prison. I worked in this federal prison in North Carolina, and I would like to get a transcript of that, something 74 at home. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Okay. I will follow up with you, Charles.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Is there any other questions that folks have for us before we wrap up for the evening?
Can we meet in person at the MLK library?
Yes, I will email you, Charles.
The February 1st?
Yep. Yeah, I will, I'll reach out to you and we'll make sure that we have, if you want to meet that time.
Thank you.
Services so that we can interpret. Yep. Well, thank you all so much for being here. And as we mentioned, this session was recorded and we will be putting the recording up on our website so that it's available. You can review it. We'll have the PowerPoint slides on the website as well. And everything else. Yeah, anything else I've missed, Hillary?
Nope, I think we are good to go. I encourage you all to look at the website, look at the application questions, the request for proposals, attend office hours, attend workshops. We have a lot of resources out there, and we want to ensure that all of your projects are eligible if that's at all possible. So thank you all so much for coming tonight, and we look forward to hopefully working with you in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. A great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for